So a lot of people have been like, Elana, you were off social media for 6 months and now you're back and all you're doing is talking about sex. Like, what's up with that? What's going on? And I laugh because I understand that there's a lot of information that probably wasn't fully understood of why I am speaking about sexuality in such a strong way. And I'm going to tell you why and how I got to sex, basically. So it started with the dance, as everything does. And I have been dancing the elements, fire, water, earth, and air for the last 9 years, over and over and over again. And then, teaching the Meta method, this ethos, this framework, it is a practice and a lens on how to look at life. And as I've taught this to thousands of people around the world, as well as just been in my own internal practice and lens around the elements, I have wound up somewhere very profound. And before I get to that, to talk about the elements, to know myself in my dance and my emotional space and how I approach life in the elements has been mind-blowing and humbling, to say the least, because fire has its own value system, its own vocabulary, and then water does, and earth and air. Like, fire is like up, and it's about like spark and intention and vision and purpose. And water is softer and moving the body, and then also trusting myself to let go and go with the flow. It's about the emotion, the inner child, and the emotional space. So much in society, we don't really value water. It's like we value fire and air, and I'll get to air in a second, but water, it's too airy-fairy, or it's not grounded enough, or it's too woo-woo. So we've created even these socially acceptable values around the element of water as not being as valuable as fire. Yet they are potent when they're not a duality, any of the elements, but you're understanding their own value system as their own thing. There's a model of how fire works, there's a model of how water works, there's a model of how earth works, and air works in life. And these elements are holding us and this planet at all times. Those elements also exist in our bodies, right? My heartbeat is my fire, the blood running through my veins is the water, my skin and bones is the earth, and then the oxygen that I breathe is the air. I am made of these elements. So how do I have a practice in my life where I am constantly in relationship to these things? So when I walk the streets in New York City, I'm able to see a tree and acknowledge it, not just walk past it, because I'm bringing that awareness into my life to create aliveness, to breathe it all in, oh yeah, life, oh yeah, other systems working the larger system, and just to be aware of those things. And elemental practice is such a key element. Going back into the stuff, then there's earth for movement. It's stomping the feet, it's down in the ground. And earth is about stability, it's about commitment, it is about clarity, knowing where you stand and going for it. It's almost like a don't fuck with me mentality. It's also bringing the fire, the spiritual, and the earth is bringing it into the physical. So it's I have a vision, and then water, what do I need to wash away in my life to make space for this thing that I'm now planting in the earth as earth. And then we can go to air. Air is about the mind and also spreading ideas. So it's pollinating, trusting the unpredictable as we blow aimlessly in the wind. So, for example, we could be building a business and a project and a startup, and we have it in the earth place. So we're now ready to spread it out into the world. And that on social media and all that stuff, that could be a way that we correlate and connect with the element of air. So we can see ourselves in this whole cycle. And as a dance, it's scattered, it's playing with speed. And it's all over the place, but it's also aimlessly moving with purpose. And we can look at this cycle of fire, water, earth, and air in a practice. Like, this is what I do for my morning practice. I can look at this of how I'm approaching my day. I can reflect on my entire year this way, and reflect on my entire life with this cycle of like, okay, like, what are my visions that are guiding me to be able to constantly be letting things go with water, grounding with earth, those things, and just letting it all go and trusting that I can't be attached to the outcome of things, and air is my teacher in that. So within this cycle, there is a fifth element, which is what I call meta, which is also time and space, called universal consciousness. It's operating from like the trunk which then allows these strong roots to grow. And all these roots need to grow because of all the elements. So then the roots expand the branches. So I always use a tree even as a metaphor within this dancing medicine wheel and circle. So universal consciousness in the center, I have also recently found out, now that I'm kind of sitting in it quite comfortably, it is also the sexual channel. Because what is more universal than the sexual channel? What is more spiritual than sex, essentially? Because something that we're like, oh, sex isn't spiritual, yet sex is the one thing that actually creates another spirit into the world. Like, how is it not spiritual? So it's also like being able to receive ourselves in the sexual channel, because that sexual channel actually allows us to stand as like a trunk of a tree, the trunk of our own lives, operating from integrity. It's like, I am integrated for the unity of humanity. I am integrated for the unity of humanity. And how to do that is by owning our sexual channel, owning our genitals, and being able to be in a practice, because the genitals essentially is our opening to be able to connect to the earth's intelligence and consciousness. Because if we're numb and we're suppressed from all that stuff, of course we're going to suppress the body of the planet and the earth, because we're suppressing it ourselves. So it's only through us opening ourselves that we're able to actually open up to the planet and the things that we need to do when it comes to saving. Like, it's not about saving, but just like not pulling oil out of the ground and pulling so many fish out of the water and destroying our oceans and destroying our lands and pulling land from like our indigenous, these incredible indigenous tribes and elders that are still holding the torch and the voice of these elements. Like, there's something here, and it's not about it being woo-woo and esoteric. It's actually being human beings that feel tapped into our multi-dimensional intelligence, the layers and vastness of our immensity, to communicate with ourselves, to communicate with the elements, then therefore the planet, and then maybe sometimes we'll shoot up into the galaxy, who knows, but to shoot up there without going further down here. But how often do we like go deeper than just like seeing the surface? Can we dig deeper and deeper and deeper? I also see that as digging deeper is going to our sex, because it's the one thing that people are thinking about, but people don't feel safe talking about it. And if we're not talking about it, then we shouldn't do it. But here's the thing, we're all doing it, so we might as well talk about it. Because once we start talking about it, we get to own it, and then we get to take ownership of it and be responsible for how we are penetrating our energy into the world, or who we're having sex with. You know, it's like, it can be sex, but I also see sexuality as penetrating our energy, our creativity out into the world. You know, I've heard people be like, I'm going celibate, or I'm not masturbating right now because I'm really focusing on a creative project. That is accurate, because it is the same sexual energy. So if someone's building that sexual energy and then driving it towards an artistic project, that makes sense. It is the same channel, creative channel, sexual channel. So it's not that it's about sex, it's about being open in our sexual channel, our creative life force, and allowing life force to move through us, because there's life force moving through this tree, there's life force moving through all beings. But if I have life force moving through my body, but it goes through my shame and my guilt and my to actually come out, then that's how I'm creating my life. I'm creating my life from my shame, from my unworthiness, for not being good enough, and like all these things. So how do we get to the root of roots of roots of roots? To know ourselves. And that's by acknowledging the sexual channel. What element do you naturally originate with? And next time you dance, when you're listening to the music, see if you can find the elements in the music, because the elements are everywhere, like the fire. Water is the melody. Earth is the kick drum, and then the air is the lyrics. Can you find your dance within separating all of those things? And then also, like, what element is your natural state? And what element from that do you notice that you're actually not accessing much of? And then how is that affecting your life? How can you see that the elements is actually a roadmap for you being able to assess how you approach yourself in the world? Because again, it's about the sexual channel and being in alignment and in integrity. I integrated for the unity of humanity, grounded in my roots and expanding from my branches. Because when I'm operating from here, there's nothing I have to reach for. Everything that I'm designed to be and do and have is going to be accessed by my branches. So I actually know when I'm operating from center, because I don't have to reach for it. I don't have to push the energy. I let the energy move me. And how does that happen? Because of practice, of embodiment, of movement, of stimulating the body to quiet the mind, to find myself here. Because in my body, I can have empathy and compassion for other bodies and the body of this planet. And that is how we're going to start getting movements out to the world. That is how we're going to actually make change and social and global impact. That is how we're going to solve hunger and starvation, and it starts with ourselves. So just that is pretty much my wrap up, that it all starts with us. The unity and the universal conversation starts on an individual level. I hope this was helpful, and I hope it explains how I got to sex, and I would also be super down and excited to share and explore share these teachings. I'm really excited to share more of these teachings. It feels quite landed for me, and it's a never-ending journey, a never-ending practice. It is the meta. And the last thing I'll say is meta, as an acronym, stands for mastering, evolution, technique, and awareness. So how can I find my own self-mastery using the technique of whatever it is? For me, it's dance. For someone else, it can be architect, music, cooking, whatever, gardening. Like, what is like my technique with using the elements and watching my awareness expand from this place and constantly finding that roadmap. So that is the meta. That is the meta method. That is the ethos and a framework for relatability to the aliveness of life. It has supported me to bring life to